The space station cafeteria was always noisy, full of different aliens talking, eating, and laughing, but in one corner there was silence. A silence so heavy that even the laughter nearby could not break it. In that corner sat a young alien girl with strange silver skin, glowing blue eyes and a metal collar around her neck. She never spoke, never joined anyone. She just sat there quietly, her hands folded on the table, her food untouched. The other aliens stayed away from her. They whispered when she passed. Some called her cursed, others called her broken, but no one dared to sit beside her. Except him, the human. His name was Daniel. He was not rich, not powerful, just a worker on the station who came for simple food after long shifts. But every time he entered, he noticed her. The silent girl in the corner. Something about her made his chest heavy. Daniel sat at his table and tried to eat, but his eyes kept looking at her. He noticed the collar around her neck. It was old metal, covered in alien symbols, like it carried a message. She lowered her head, never raising her eyes, as if she wanted to vanish. That day, the cafeteria was louder than usual. A group of alien guards mocked her. One of them tossed a piece of bread at her table. It fell near her tray, but she didn't react. She just sat still like a statue. Daniel's fist tightened. He wanted to say something, but his voice caught in his throat. He told himself, "She is not my problem. I should just finish my food and go." But his heart refused to listen. His eyes went again to the collar. The symbols looked strange but familiar. He had studied some alien languages during his free time. Just out of curiosity, something pushed him. He stood up, his tray still half full, and walked slowly to her corner. The noise of the cafeteria seemed to fade. The guards who had mocked her stopped laughing. Everyone turned to see what the human was doing. Daniel reached the table and gently asked, "Is this seat taken?" The girl did not answer. She only lifted her glowing eyes for a second. Her face was young but tired. She shook her head slightly. Daniel sat down. He tried to smile, but she looked away. Her silence wrapped around them, heavy like chains. Then Daniel's eyes went again to the collar. The symbols were clear now, carved deep in the metal. He leaned forward, squinting, and whispered the words as he read them. At first slow, then faster, because suddenly he understood. The collar was not decoration. It was not just metal. It was a message. And the message was cruel. Daniel's lips trembled as he read, "Mute property of the House of Vanar. Punished for speaking, punished for crying. Punished for hope." His eyes burned, his throat closed. The cafeteria around him disappeared. All he could see was her thin shoulders, her lowered head, and that cursed collar declaring her pain to the whole galaxy. The girl noticed his expression. Her glowing eyes met his for the first time. She seemed surprised that he had read it. No one else ever cared to know. She tilted her head slightly, like she was asking silently, "You understand?" Daniel blinked and tears blurred his sight. He looked at her and whispered, "I'm sorry." His voice cracked, and everyone who watched thought, "Why is the human crying?" The guards frowned, confused. The cafeteria grew quiet. Even the sound of plates and spoons stopped. Daniel wiped his eyes quickly, embarrassed. But the pain in his heart remained heavy. He realized this girl had lived under silent chains, not by choice but by cruelty. Her voice stolen, her identity branded on a collar. He clenched his fists under the table. His mind shouted, "This is wrong. No one deserves this," but he stayed quiet for now, because the guards were still watching. And he knew if he acted rashly, it could cost both of them dearly. Still, in that moment, something changed. He could not unsee the words, he could not unfeel the pain. He could not leave her alone anymore. The alien girl kept staring at him. Her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say something, but no sound came, only silence. Yet her eyes spoke more than words. They said, "Please don't look away." They said, "Don't treat me like a ghost." Daniel nodded once, a small promise in his eyes. A promise he didn't yet understand, but he felt it burning inside. The cafeteria noise slowly returned. The guard shrugged and left. The crowd forgot. But Daniel's world had shifted forever. He sat with her until his food turned cold. And when he stood to leave, he whispered again, "I'll see you tomorrow." Not knowing if she believed him, not knowing what he would do, only knowing that his tears had already bound him to her fate. And the alien girl, still silent, watched him go with wide eyes, her fingers touching the collar gently, for the first time not with shame but with the faintest spark of hope. Daniel could not sleep that night. He kept seeing the collar in his mind. Those cruel words burned into his memory. Mute property of the House of Vanar, punished for speaking, punished for crying, punished for hope. Every time he closed his eyes, the words appeared again. and the face of the girl came with them, her glowing eyes silently asking him if he truly understood. He turned on his bed, restless. The space station lights outside his window glowed cold and distant. He had seen many hard things during his work in outer colonies, but never something that made his chest hurt this way. This was not just about a collar. It was about a soul chained. The next day, Daniel entered the cafeteria again. His steps heavy, his heart beating faster than usual. He scanned the room. And yes, she was there in the same corner. The same untouched food, the same silence. She had become part of the station. Invisible to most, but not to him. Never again to him. The guards from yesterday were not around. Still, the crowd kept their distance as if her silence was a disease. Daniel walked directly to her table, ignoring the stares, and sat down without asking this time. She looked at him quickly, then down at the table again. Daniel leaned forward slowly, lowering his voice. "I read your caller yesterday," he said, his throat dry. I understood what it says." Her hands twitched, she froze, then lifted her eyes to him. They widened slightly. She looked almost afraid, as if his knowledge was dangerous. Daniel gave a small nod, his voice softer now. "I know you cannot speak. Not because you don't want to, but because they forbid you." For the first time, he saw a tiny shake in her shoulders, like a tremor of pain breaking through her calm mask. She pressed her lips together, then touched the collar with her slender fingers, gently, carefully, as if the metal could still bite her. Daniel whispered, "Who did this to you?" But of course she could not answer. Silence fell heavy between them. He took a deep breath and decided to read the words again, this time slowly, in her presence. To show her that he truly understood mute, he said, "Property of the House of Vanar." His voice shook. "Punished for speaking, punished for crying, punished for hope." Her glowing eyes filled with moisture. Not quite tears, but close, and Daniel's chest tightened even more. He realized she had probably never heard anyone speak those words aloud with compassion. They had always been a curse, a reminder, but in his voice they became something else. A witness to her suffering. She looked at him long, searching his face. Then she raised her hands, moving them slowly. She pointed at her collar, then at her heart, then at him. Daniel blinked, trying to understand. "You want me to carry it?" he guessed, but she shook her head. Frustration filling her eyes, she repeated the motion, this time tapping the collar harder, then pressing her palm on her chest, then pointing at him again. Daniel leaned closer, his heart racing. "You mean, you want me to know your truth?" The girl's eyes softened. She nodded once. A small but powerful gesture. Daniel clenched his fists under the table. "I swear I will not forget," he said, his voice trembling. "I will not let them erase what you are. Not while I'm here." At that moment, a shadow fell over the table. Daniel looked up and saw one of the alien guards. Tall, armored, his eyes suspicious. "Human." The guard growled. "Why are you wasting time with her?" Daniel's heart pounded. He forced a calm face. "Just eating my food," he answered simply. The guard's eyes narrowed, then shifted to the girl. "She's nothing." "Don't bother," he spat and walked away. Daniel let out a slow breath. Sweat on his neck. He glanced back at the girl. She sat frozen again, but her eyes burned with shame. Daniel shook his head. "Don't listen to them," he whispered. "You're not nothing, I promise you that." For the first time, her lips curved slightly, not a smile, but something close, fragile, like a flower opening in a storm. It lasted only a second, but Daniel saw it, and it filled him with fire. The cafeteria grew noisy again, but Daniel leaned closer and whispered, "Tomorrow, I'll find a way to help you. I don't know how yet, but I will." Her eyes widened, surprised, but she did not shake her head this time. She did not push him away. She only stared at him as if testing whether his words were real. When Daniel finally stood to leave, she reached out quickly, her fingers brushing his sleeve for the briefest moment. Then pulling back, it was nothing, but for him it was everything. A silent thank you, a silent plea. As Daniel walked out, the caller's cruel words echoed in his head again, but this time they did not crush him. They became a vow, a reason. He knew now that her story was not over, and maybe, just maybe, he was meant to be part of it. Daniel's thoughts refused to rest every time he closed his eyes. The alien girl's glowing stare returned, the caller's words echoing louder, punished for speaking, punished for crying, punished for hope. He could not push it away, he did not want to push it away. He decided he needed answers. The name House of Vanar scratched at his mind like sharp glass. Who were they? What power did they hold? Why had they chained a young girl with such cruel symbols? That night he slipped quietly into the station's data archives. He was only a worker, not an officer, but he had learned to bend the rules when he needed. He typed the alien script into the console, and after long seconds the screen blinked with results. The House of Vanar was old, older than the human presence in this sector. Once a royal family of conquerors, now a shadow empire dealing in trade, politics, and something darker, slavery. The record described camps where prisoners were marked and silenced, where collars like hers were forced upon the weak. Daniel's stomach twisted. He scrolled down. One line burned into his eyes. The collar not only marks ownership but suppresses natural speech through neural pain impulses. His hands trembled, so it was true. She was not mute by choice. She had been made mute. Her voice stolen by cruel science. He leaned back, his heart pounding. He whispered to himself, "Monsters." His fist slammed the table softly, but his anger was afire. The next day, Daniel returned to the cafeteria, this time with heavy steps. When he sat across from her, the girl raised her eyes. She seemed to sense his mood. His jaw was tight. His hands clenched. He whispered, "I know who they are." Her eyes widened a little. She tilted her head. He continued, "The House of Vanar. They took everything from you, didn't they?" Her lips parted, her eyes darkened. Slowly she nodded, her hands moved again. Trembling fingers drawing shapes in the air. Daniel tried to follow, but he failed. Frustration filled her face. She stopped. Pressing her hands hard to the table, Daniel leaned closer. "Don't give up, I want to know." "Please." Her glowing eyes locked with his. And in that silence, Daniel saw fragments of her story. Not with words, but in the way her shoulders trembled, in the way her fingers pressed the scarred metal of her collar. And then, as if the universe wanted him to know, he remembered an old trick. The archives had contained not just facts but images. Marks of the Vanar. One image had shown a group of children, all collared, all silent. Daniel whispered, "You had a family, didn't you?" Her eyes flinched, moisture gathered at the corners. She lowered her head. Her hand went to her chest. Her fingers tapped once, then twice, then spread wide. Daniel's voice broke. "They were taken. All of them?" She nodded slowly. Painfully, Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to scream at the whole galaxy, but he stayed still. He knew this moment was fragile. He whispered, "And you survived alone." Her hand trembled on the table. She pressed it to her throat, then shook her head sharply, as if saying, "I did not survive whole, they broke me." Daniel's heart cracked. He reached across the table, gently touching her wrist. Her skin was cool, almost metallic, but alive, trembling. She did not pull away this time. The cafeteria around them blurred into nothing. Daniel saw only her pain and the endless story behind those silent eyes. He whispered, "I don't know how yet, but I'll find a way to give you back your voice. I swear." For a second she froze, then her eyes softened. And for the first time he saw tears roll down her cheeks, quiet shining drops falling onto the metal collar. She tried to wipe them quickly, but Daniel shook his head. "Don't hide them. Not from me." The silence stretched, heavy but full of meaning. Suddenly, the doors of the cafeteria hissed open. 2 Vanar guards entered, their armor marked with the same crest Daniel had seen in the archives. His chest turned cold. They scanned the room, their eyes landing on her. One of them smirked cruelly. Daniel pulled his hand back quickly, but not before the girl gave the tiniest shake of her head, warning him, "Don't speak, don't act yet." The guards barked something in their guttural language. The girl stiffened, her hands shaking. Daniel clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms, rage burning in his chest. One guard laughed, pointing at her collar. He said a word Daniel now understood from his reading. "Property." Daniel's face burned red. The guards left after throwing mocking words. But the fire inside Daniel did not fade. He looked at the girl and whispered firmly, "No one owns you." "Not while I'm alive." She stared at him, her glowing eyes wide, her lips trembling as if she wanted to speak. But the collar hummed softly, a cruel reminder of its power. She closed her eyes. And in that moment, Daniel realized something. The past had broken her, but it had not ended her, and maybe, just maybe, the future was waiting for him to change it. Daniel could not forget the guards' mocking laughter. Their word property echoed inside his head again and again. He wanted to stand up, to fight them right there in the cafeteria, but the girl's tiny shake of her head had stopped him. She had begged him with her eyes, "Do nothing now." That night he lay awake in his small room. Staring at the ceiling, he whispered to himself, "She doesn't trust me. Not yet. She thinks if I fight I will only make it worse for her." And maybe she was right. Still, the fire inside him grew hotter. The next day, Daniel went again. He always went now. His feet carried him to her corner as if it was the only place he belonged. But this time when he sat, she did not look at him. Her eyes stayed on the table, her body stiff, cold like stone. Daniel tried to speak gently. I read more about the Vaynar. I know what they do. I know how cruel they are, but she gave no sign she was listening. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. I want to help you. Suddenly she raised her eyes. And for the first time he saw anger in them. Not sadness, not fear, but burning anger. She shook her head sharply and tapped the collar, then pressed her hand hard against her chest. Daniel tried to guess. You don't believe me? You think I'll fail? She glared, her glowing eyes wet. Her hand moved quickly now, pointing at him, then away, then crossing her arms like chains. Daniel swallowed. You think I'll become like them? Her eyes closed tight, her shoulders shaking, and she turned her head away. Daniel's chest ached. He whispered, No, never, I'm not them. But she did not look back. She stayed silent. The break of trust was sharp. Daniel felt it like a knife. He wanted to scream, to shake her, to prove himself. But he forced his hands flat on the table instead. I'm not leaving, he said quietly. You can be angry, you can doubt me. But I won't leave you alone. The next days were heavy. Daniel sat with her, but she barely looked at him. The distance between them felt wider than the whole galaxy. Sometimes she shifted her tray away from him. Sometimes she kept her head lowered the entire meal. Daniel refused to give up. He began doing small things. Sliding food toward her, sharing his bread, pushing his water glass closer. She never accepted at first. But once he noticed her drinking when he wasn't looking, and once he saw a piece of bread missing from his plate after he turned away. Still, the wall of mistrust stood tall, and Daniel wondered if he could ever climb it. One evening, as he left the cafeteria, he heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned quickly, and there she was, standing in the hallway, her silver skin shining faintly under the station lights. She had followed him. His heart jumped. You want to talk? He whispered. She did not answer, of course, but her eyes searched his face. Then she pointed down the hallway, toward the maintenance deck, a quiet place where few went. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. All right, let's go. They walked in silence until they reached the dim deck, the hum of machines filling the air. She turned and faced him. Her hands moved slowly. Carefully, she pointed at herself, then at him, then crossed her arms again like before. Daniel whispered, You're afraid. Afraid I'll chain you too. Her eyes filled with tears. She nodded, a tiny motion, but it shattered Daniel's heart. He stepped closer, but carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. He held out his hands empty, showing he had no chains, no weapons. I will never hurt you, he said. Not with chains, not with lies. Not with silence. Her lips trembled. She touched the collar lightly, then looked at him, and for the first time he saw her pain without walls. Her whole body shook, silent sobs racking her thin frame. Daniel couldn't stop himself. He reached forward slowly, giving her every chance to step back, but she didn't. She stood frozen. When his hand touched the collar gently, she flinched, then stayed. His fingers traced the cruel symbols, and he whispered, This doesn't define you. Her glowing eyes looked up at him, wide and desperate, and for a heartbeat the mistrust cracked. He saw something new, a flicker of belief, fragile but real. He pulled his hand back, giving her space. I don't ask you to trust me today, he said softly. But give me a chance to earn it. She stared at him, her breathing uneven, then slowly, carefully she nodded once. Daniel's chest loosened, hope blooming where despair had been. He knew the break of trust had wounded them both, but maybe, just maybe, the healing had begun. When they returned to the main hall, she walked one step behind him, not beside him yet, but not far either. And that distance, small as it was, felt like a victory, Daniel whispered to himself. One step at a time, and the fire inside him grew stronger, because he knew now that walls could break, even walls built from silence and pain. Daniel woke before the station lights brightened, his mind already racing. Every day he sat with her, every day he saw the collar burn into her skin, and every day the fire inside him grew hotter. He could not sit forever, he had to act. He began studying the collar more carefully. Whenever she allowed him close, he pretended to be casual, but his eyes traced every line of the metal, every tiny spark of its hidden circuits. He noticed a faint hum, a pulse that came from the back, where a small lock sealed it tight. One night back in his room, he pulled out an old toolkit, the same tools he had used for repairing broken machines in the colony mines. He laid them on the table, Cutters, probes, a small plasma knife, and a scanner, he whispered to himself. If I can fix machines, maybe I can break this monster. But he knew it was dangerous. The archives had warned him. The collar is not only a lock, it is a tracker. Any attempt to break it sends a signal to its masters. Daniel closed his eyes, his jaw tight. If I touch it wrong, they'll know. They'll come for her. The next day in the cafeteria, he leaned closer to her and whispered, "The collar. It has a tracker. If we try to cut it, they'll know." Her glowing eyes widened. Fear flashing inside them, she shook her head sharply, as if begging him not to risk it. Daniel nodded slowly. "I understand, but listen. There's always a way." He placed his hand flat on the table. "Steady. If I can disrupt the signal just for a few minutes, we could unlock it." She stared at him, uncertain, her silence heavy. Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Do you want to be free?" Her eyes glistened. She touched the collar lightly, then pressed her hand to her chest, then nodded once, firm this time, not weak. Daniel's heart pounded. He whispered, "Then we plan." That evening, he didn't sleep. He drew a rough sketch on a piece of scrap paper, marking the collar, the circuits, the lock, and a device he would need to build, something to jam the signal. Even if only for a short time, he whispered. 3 minutes, maybe less, but enough. Days passed, and Daniel secretly gathered parts from the maintenance deck, wires, coils, and an old transmitter. He hid them under his bunk. His hands worked late into the night, his eyes heavy but his spirit sharp. One evening, while the girl waited in their quiet corner, Daniel slipped a small device onto the table. Hidden under his hand, he whispered, "This is it, a jammer. When I activate it, the signal will go dark for a few minutes. No one will know." Her eyes widened. She looked at the device, then at him, fear and hope colliding inside her. She touched the collar again. Shaking her head slowly, Daniel whispered urgently, "I know it's dangerous, but if we don't try, you'll wear this forever." His eyes burned. "You deserve to speak, to cry, to hope again." She looked at him long, then lowered her eyes, silence heavy again. But when she lifted them, there was something new in her gaze. Trust, fragile but stronger than before. She nodded once, slow but sure. Daniel swallowed hard, relief flooding him. "All right. Then we'll need the right place, quiet, safe. Away from guards," he thought quickly. Then whispered, "The maintenance deck late at night, no one goes there. The machines will hide us." The girl hesitated, then pressed her hand to her chest and pointed at him. Daniel smiled faintly. "Yes, I'll be there with you. You won't be alone." The next nights crawled by like years. Daniel checked and rechecked the device, his hands trembling with nerves. He whispered to himself, "If I fail, the signal will bring them, and we're dead." But then he remembered her eyes, her silent tears, and his fear hardened into steel. Finally, the night came. Daniel slipped into the maintenance deck, the hum of engines masking his steps, and there she was, waiting in the shadows, her silver skin glowing faintly in the dark. Her eyes wide with both fear and courage, Daniel showed her the small device. "The jammer," he whispered. "Once I start, we'll have 3 minutes, maybe less. I'll cut the collar then. You have to stay still. No matter what." She nodded quickly, her hands gripping the edge of her tunic tightly, her chest rising and falling fast. Daniel placed the jammer on the floor, his finger hovering over the switch, his heart racing. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. The girl took a long breath, then slowly nodded. Her glowing eyes steady now, Daniel whispered, "All right. Here we go," and pressed the switch. The jammer lit up, humming, sparks dancing across its coils. The collar around her neck flickered faintly, its hum breaking for the first time. Daniel grabbed his plasma knife and leaned forward, his hand steady despite the storm inside him. The lock glowed red as he touched it. Sparks hissed, the collar vibrated. The girl gasped but stayed still. Daniel gritted his teeth, whispering, "Wah, come on, come on. Break." The timer in his head ticked. 1 minute gone, sweat dripped down his face. The collar sparked again, smoke rising from its circuits. Suddenly the jammer flickered, a warning beep echoing. Daniel's chest tightened. "No, not yet. Just a little more." He pressed harder, the plasma knife cutting deeper. The collar screeched, and then, click, a sharp sound. The lock cracked, the metal split slightly. Daniel's heart jumped, but before he could finish, the jammer sputtered again. The signal almost returning, he looked at her, her eyes wide with terror but burning with hope, and whispered, "Hold on, just a little longer." The jammer shook, sparks flying from its side, the red light flashing weak. Daniel's heart pounded like a drum. Sweat rolled down his face. He had seconds left, maybe less. He pressed the plasma knife deeper into the collar's lock. The metal glowed bright, hissing. The girl's body trembled, her glowing eyes wide with fear but locked on his face. She did not move, not even when the collar sparked against her skin. Daniel gritted his teeth, whispering, "Come on, break now." The plasma knife hissed louder, and then, with a sharp crack, the lock snapped, the collar split apart, falling in two heavy pieces to the floor. Silence followed, heavy and unreal. The jammer sputtered one last time before dying completely. Its coils smoking, Daniel's hands shook. He looked at her, his chest heaving. The girl gasped suddenly, her hands flying to her throat. She coughed, a raw sound breaking the air. It was the first sound she had made in who knew how long. Her eyes widened in shock, as if she herself could not believe it. Daniel leaned closer, whispering, "It's off. It's gone, you're free." Her lips trembled. She opened her mouth. A soft sound came out, broken, weak, like a whisper of wind, but it was a voice, her voice. Tears filled Daniel's eyes. His throat closing, he whispered, "That's it, speak." "You can speak now," the girl tried again. Her voice cracked, broken by years of silence. But this time a word formed. One single word, rough but real, she whispered. Thank." Daniel's eyes blurred with tears. His chest shook. He covered his mouth with his hand. Overwhelmed, he whispered, "You don't need to thank me. Not for this, it's yours, your voice is yours." The girl's tears spilled freely now. Rolling down her silver cheeks, she clutched her throat as if protecting the fragile gift just returned. Her lips moved again, trembling. Name, Daniel blinked. "Your name?" he asked softly. She nodded weakly, trying again. Lyra, the word broke, but the meaning was clear. Daniel's heart clenched. He whispered the name slowly, reverently. "Lyra?" The sound of it filled the room like music. The girl, no, Lyra, lowered her eyes, overwhelmed. Suddenly, a sharp sound cut the moment. The door of the maintenance deck hissed open. Daniel froze. Lyra's eyes widened in terror. Two guards entered, their heavy boots echoing. They scanned the room, their eyes narrowing. Daniel quickly kicked the broken collar under a pipe, hiding it, then leaned casually against the machine, his heart pounding. One guard barked something in the Vanar tongue. Suspicious, his gaze sharp on Daniel and the girl. Lyra lowered her head quickly, pretending silence again. Her hands trembling at her sides, Daniel forced a bored look. "Maintenance check," he muttered. "This machine's been failing." "I was told to inspect." The guard's eyes narrowed further, stepping closer. Lyra held her breath. Her lips pressed tight. Daniel's palms sweated. His hand brushed the plasma knife at his side. Ready if needed. Finally, the guard spat on the floor, muttered something cruel about useless human workers, and turned away. The second guard followed. The doors hissing shut again. Daniel exhaled hard, his knees weak. Lyra's shoulders dropped, relief flooding her. He turned to her, whispering, "That was close." Too close, his voice shook. But then he saw her eyes, wide and shining, her lips moving, and he forgot the fear. Lyra whispered again, weak but real, "Daniel." Her first time speaking his name. Daniel felt his chest explode with warmth, tears spilling down his cheeks. He covered his face with his hand and laughed softly through the tears. "You said my name." Lyra's lips curved, small, fragile, but real. A smile. Her first smile since he had seen her. Daniel dropped his hand, whispering, "I'll never let them chain you again." "Lyra," she shook her head gently, whispering, "Come." Her voice still broken, but clear enough, warning him. Daniel's jaw tightened. He nodded. "Then we'll be ready. We'll run before they know." He touched the broken jammer. "This won't fool them long, but we'll make a plan." Lyra stared at him, then reached out slowly, her small hand touching his wrist, her voice trembling but steadying with each word. "Not alone." Daniel covered her hand with his, whispering, "Never alone. Not anymore." The broken collar lay hidden under the pipe, silent now, but its absence spoke louder than any scream. A chain had been broken, a voice unlocked, and with it, a promise forged in tears and fire. For the first time since Daniel had met her, Lyra lifted her head high, her glowing eyes shining not with fear, but with fragile courage, and her voice, soft but true, whispered again, "Free." Daniel smiled through his tears, whispering back, "Free." But inside he knew, freedom was only the beginning. The real fight was still ahead. The next morning the station felt different, at least to Daniel. Every corridor, every sound carried new weight. He walked with quick steps, his mind heavy with one truth. The collar was gone. Lyra could speak again, but danger was closer than ever. He found her in the cafeteria as always, but this time she looked different. She sat straighter, her hands not folded in fear but resting lightly on the table. Her glowing eyes searched the door until they found him, and for the first time she whispered his name. Broken but clear, Daniel. His chest tightened with pride. He sat across from her, whispering, "How do you feel?" She touched her throat gently, her lips trembling. "Strange, but free," the words cracked. But each one was victory. Daniel smiled softly, but he also knew eyes were everywhere. Already the guards would suspect. The collar's signal was gone, and the House of Vanar never ignored missing property. That night Daniel prepared a small bag. He packed food, water, and the jammer's remains. He whispered to himself, "We can't stay. They'll come." His heart pounded with fear and resolve. He met Lyra in the maintenance deck again. She wore a hood pulled low, her voice still fragile. "Where? Go?" she asked, her eyes wide. Daniel whispered, "There's a cargo ship leaving tomorrow. It's human crewed, no Vanar inspection. If we can slip aboard, we can vanish." Lyra hesitated, then nodded slowly. "With you," she whispered, the words shaking but sure. Daniel reached out, squeezed her hand gently. "Always." But fate was not kind. Before dawn, alarms echoed through the station. Red lights flashing. Daniel's chest tightened. They know, he thought. He ran through the corridors toward their meeting place. His heart hammering, he found Lyra cornered near the deck, 2 Vanar guards gripping her arms. She struggled weakly, her voice breaking. "No, no." Daniel's blood boiled. Without thinking, he charged, slamming into one guard, the plasma knife flashing in his hand. Sparks flew as he slashed the alien's armor. The second guard swung at him, but Lyra moved. Her silence broken by a scream. Raw but powerful. The sound shocked the guard, his grip loosened. Daniel struck again, this time with all his strength. The guard fell back, groaning. Lyra stumbled into his arms, her breath sharp. "Run," she gasped. Her voice trembling but clear. Daniel nodded, pulling her along the narrow corridors, alarms blaring louder. They reached the cargo bay. Ships lined up, workers shouting. Daniel spotted the human freighter readying departure. He grabbed Lyra's hand tighter, whispering, "That one, come on." But a shout echoed behind them, more guards rushing, the crest of the Vanar shining on their armor. Daniel's throat closed, his body ready to fight to the death. Lyra stopped suddenly, turning to face them. Her glowing eyes blazing, she whispered, voice breaking but strong, "No more chains." Then she screamed, a voice torn free after years of silence, filled with rage and pain. The sound shook the bay. Guards stumbled back in shock. Daniel pulled her close, whispering, "That's your voice, Lyra. No one can take it again." They rushed onto the freighter, the hatch sealing behind them, the ship's engines roaring to life. Outside, guards pounded on the locked doors. But it was too late. The ship lifted, stars rushing into view, the station shrinking behind them. Daniel finally collapsed into a chair. His body shaking with exhaustion, Lyra sat beside him, silent tears streaming down her silver cheeks. Daniel whispered, "You're free now." Lyra turned to him, her lips trembling. "Free?" "Because you cried," she whispered, her broken voice remembering that first day when his tears had fallen as he read the collar. Daniel's throat closed. He shook his head. "No, Lyra, because you survived. Because you never gave up." She reached out, her hand trembling, resting lightly on his cheek. "Not alone," she whispered again. Daniel covered her hand with his own tears falling, the tears of freedom, of relief, of promise. He whispered, "Never alone." The freighter cut through the darkness, carrying them away from chains, away from silence, toward an unknown future, but one built on courage, on trust, and on a single fragile voice reborn. Lyra leaned against him, her eyes closing, whispering one last word before sleep claimed her. "Home." Daniel smiled through his tears, his arms holding her safe. "Yes, home," he whispered. And for the first time, the galaxy ahead felt not endless but hopeful.